the Roosevelt administration was very light on its support of civil rights. There was this sort of impetus to sort of spur action and sort of create opportunity for African American. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, serving then as an advocate for the NAACP, had access to the president and his closest advisors. And after some prodding, Roosevelt agreed to appoint African American to key cabinet positions. The Federal Council on Negro Affairs, better known as the Black Cabinet, was created, and this group was created to oversee that the African American needs were addressed. In subsequent New Deal legislation, the Black Cabinet was led by Marian McLeod Bethune, and this was all done unofficially. Bethune was a close friend of Eleanor Roosevelt. She had been born during Reconstruction back in 1875, during close to the end of Reconstruction, and she had been an educator, and she had founded what was then known as the Daytona Educational and Industrial Institute of Florida. Her school would eventually merge with Cookman Institute in 1929 to form Bethune-Cookman College. Now, while Bethune was also an education proponent, she was also a fierce advocate of civil rights. She founded the National Council of Negro Women back in 1935. She also organized and coordinated mass demonstrations and campaigns to push for a greater role for African Americans in the federal government. In 1939, she was appointed to the position of Director of Negro Affairs of the National Youth Administration, which was designed to promote education and jobs for young people. Eleanor Roosevelt was also a part of a very important moment in the Depression era civil rights movement. In 1939, the Daughters of the American Revolution, a politically conservative patriotic organization, declined to have the renowned opera singer Marian Anderson perform at Constitution Hall in Washington on account of her ethnicity. Outraged by this, Eleanor Roosevelt resigned from the organization and arranged to have Anderson perform at the Lincoln Memorial, where 75,000 people came to hear her. The actions of Eleanor Roosevelt would have a cataclysmic effect on the African American community. Since the 15th Amendment was ratified, African Americans received the vote, and their vote was almost certainly a vote for the Republican Party. The Republican Party had been the party of Charles Sumner and Thaddeus Stevens. Frederick Douglass supported that party. Emancipation and freedom were all attained under that party. The earliest African American political professionals like Robert Smalls had been Republican politicians, community leaders. Du Bois, Washington, they had all supported the Republican Party. However, Eleanor Roosevelt's firm and consistent support for civil rights, particularly during the Depression years, began to sort of light this path to where African Americans began to support the New Deal. They saw the New Deal as a good deal for them, and they saw Eleanor Roosevelt as being good for them. The community as a whole continued to support the Republican Party overwhelmingly and would continue to do so well into the 1960s. But the First Lady had sown the seeds for, especially in urban industrial centers, she has sown the seeds that will see great gains made in the generations to come for the Democratic Party. And with that, we'll end our lecture on African Americans in the early 20th century. Hit like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time for another lecture.